So today we are very pleased to be with Rip Esselstyn. Rip Esselstyn is a New York Times best-selling author and the creator of the Engine 2 diet, a plant-based diet that helped save the lives of his firefighting crew in Austin, Texas, and has gone on to help tens of thousands of people around the world transition to a plant-based diet for optimal health and well-being. Rip runs live events, online education, a healthy food line, and has written multiple books. Now, he's written 3 books: The Engine 2 Diet, Plant Strong, Discover the World's Healthiest Diet, and The Engine 2 7-Day Rescue Diet. He was featured in the documentary Forks Over Knives and is a strong advocate of a plant strong diet, a term that he coined to describe a diet rich in plant foods and devoid of meat, fish, eggs, dairy, and processed food. Rip has been an athlete all his life as a collegiate swimmer and a pro triathlete. So thanks so much for being here with us today, Rip.
You got it, you guys. I love what you guys are doing. Happy to be a part.
Awesome. Okay, so maybe let's start at the top here. Tell us about your career as a professional triathlete. And were you eating a plant-based diet at that time, or were you eating something slightly different?
Well, you know what? Let's go back to 1982, and that's when I first when I started my studies at the University of Texas at Austin, and I went there on a swimming scholarship. Swam there for 4 years. When I graduated, I was like, all right, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with my life? And I loved athletics. I loved competition. And I had seen a friend of mine participate in a triathlon back in the summer of 1986. And I was just really intrigued with it. And so I started researching triathlons and, what the distances were and if it was something that I thought I could excel at. And I discovered that the number 1 triathlete on the planet at the time in 1987 was a guy named Dave Scott from Davis, California. And he was a hardcore vegetarian. And it just so happens that my father's research at the Cleveland Clinic that he began in 1984, he was now about 3.5, 4 years into it. And he already had some incredibly compelling evidence showing that we as human beings can metabolize away these plaque formations. We basically, that we form by eating all the wrong foods at a very, very early age. And so I was just completely sold on this lifestyle for health reasons and for athletic performance reasons. And so in 1987, I started eating this way, fueling myself with plants as my muse, kind of a legal form of doping. And it propelled me to a point to where I was, for almost a 10-year period, I was one of the top 10 triathletes in the United States at the international distance, which is a 1.5 kilometer swim, a 40K bike, and a 10K run. It takes about an hour and 50 minutes when you're pushing it. You got the pedal to the metal the whole way, right on that fine line between aerobic and anaerobic threshold. And I attribute a large part of my success to plants. So they're cleanest burning fuel out there. When you look at the macronutrients and the micronutrients that you're getting from plant strong foods, there's no better fuel source out there. So just to kind of go through the macro and the micronutrients. So on a macro level, there's 3 that you need to get: protein, carbohydrates, and fat. When it comes to protein, instead of getting a weak, insidiously destructive form of animal protein that wreaks havoc on your body, we're getting a plant-friendly source of protein, the mother source, where all protein basically originates from. All the essential amino acids originate in plants. If animal products have them, it's because they basically either directly or indirectly gotten them from plants. So really, animal protein is just a recycled form of protein. So let's go right to the mother source, plant. So protein, mother source for athletes. When it comes to carbohydrates, what as human beings, right? As people, a lot of your audience, as diabetics, what fuels our 100 trillion cells?
I think it's glucose.
Glucose.
It's glucose, right? It's sugar. And you guys are gonna have to participate here, all right? It's right. So it's sugar. And so as athletes, our primary fuel source is sugar. And so we want to make sure we're getting really right around 70% of our calories from unprocessed carbohydrates. The problem is most Americans are getting their carbohydrates from junky processed carbohydrates that are a real problem. But when you're getting them from fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans, as you guys well know, right, all these carbs, all these sugars are attached to fiber, which acts as a nice, slow, steady release of energy over an extended period of time. So it's a beautiful thing for athletes. And then the last macronutrient we have is fats. And we absolutely need fats. We need, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5% at a minimum of our calories coming from the polyunsaturated essential fats. And when you're eating a whole food, plant strong diet, you'll probably be getting somewhere in the neighborhood on the low end, 10%, on the high end, 20% of your calories from fat, depending upon how many nuts and nut butters and avocados and olives, tofu, tempeh, the high fatty foods that you're consuming as an athlete. Somebody that's a type 2 diabetic, type 1 diabetic, has heart disease, we want to get that total fat calorie down to about probably closer to 10% of total calories, so we can metabolize away the plaque formations. If we have heart disease as type 2 diabetics, we want to make sure we can metabolize away that intracellular fat that we have in our cells, so we go from being insulin resistant to insulin sensitive. So as athletes, we got all the macronutrients covered: the protein, the carbs, the fats. Glorious package of these macronutrients. Now we got micronutrients. And as athletes, I can tell you, we got our heart rate up. We're breathing. We are breathing heavy, right? 2 to 6 hours a day in training. So we are building up all these free radicals, all this oxidative stress. What is the best way to basically rust-proof ourselves from this oxidative stress? It is from the power of plants that are loaded with amazing phytonutrients and antioxidants that are going to mitigate and basically mitigate this oxidative stress and are going to neutralize these pesky free radicals that are responsible for promoting disease, prematurely aging us, and wreaking havoc on our systems. So plants are the bomb diggity. And then fiber. We love fiber as athletes. It basically it cleans out our systems. You're going to the bathroom typically 2 to 3 times a day, so you're always feeling light and unencumbered. You're not being weighed down. And then of course vitamins and minerals. The mother source for all vitamins and minerals comes from plants. 13 vitamins, right? We can get all but 2 from plants. The exceptions are vitamin D and B12. Get some sun as an athlete, right? You're set on your B12, and then your vitamin D, and then the B12. Take a 5,000 microgram tablet once a week for like $12-13 a year, and you're covered there. No known toxicity or downside there. And then minerals, right? 17 major and minor minerals. You start eating this way, and plants are the first class, top rate form of absorbable minerals that you're gonna ever want. So all your magnesium, your zinc, your iron, your calcium, all that stuff, you're getting it from your whole plant-based foods. So as an athlete, this is if you're not currently eating a plant-strong diet, a whole food plant-based diet, you're not giving yourself the best chance to race it at your best.
So this is actually really.
That was a long answer, but there you go.
No, this is great actually, because listening to your story, sort of going from your more meat eating days or more processed food days towards a plant-strong diet, I also made the same transition in about my college days, and I noticed a remarkable difference in the way my body felt.
Right.
In my flexibility and my ability to perform, and most importantly, my ability to recover from exercise.
Yep.
There's no question in my mind that now I can perform at a higher work output, and I can perform work more often, and it feels much more natural. So can you compare your previous meat eating days when you were an athlete in college versus your post-college plant-based days, and see, how can you actually feel a difference?
Great question. And my answer is one you're not going to like. The answer is no, I couldn't tell a difference. Keep in mind, right? I was 21, 22, or I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 when I was at the University of Texas eating on the athletic training table, and, the steaks, the bacon and the eggs and all that stuff. And I almost feel like when you're that young, you can get away with almost bloody murder when it comes to your nutrition. But as soon as you get into your mid 20s, your late 20s, it changes radically. So I couldn't notice a visible difference. I didn't really feel a difference, but I can tell you, it's what propelled me to compete at a world-class level until I was almost 44, 45 years old. Like you said, when you're eating this way, you recover better, you perform better. You're eating foods that are just so very alkaline, right? As opposed to acidic, very anti-inflammatory. If you want to recover after workout, you want these anti-inflammatory, alkaline, whole plant-based foods. And for all the reasons I just described earlier, there's no better, stronger food source for athletes or for us as human beings.
So do you think that you could have become a world-class athlete if you did not adopt a plant-strong diet?
Maybe in the very, very beginning, but not for an extended period of time. No. I'm going to tell you, my immune system was like a Canadian moose, right? I very, very, very infrequently got sick. I was sleeping like a baby. I got up and I was fired up to work out. I wasn't dragging around, and when you're eating, when you're consuming a dirty fuel source, meat, dairy, I just can't help but think that, your engine is going to start sputtering out, and you're not going to be able to go as nearly as long or as hard or as strong.
When you were talking there about carbohydrates, I really want to go back to that point about whole carbohydrates, intact whole grains and stuff like that. So why don't you just go into detail a little more, what the plant strong diet is and sort of the whole concept.
Yeah. Well, so, the thing is, you look at the paleo people right now, and their whole thing is low carbohydrate, high protein, right? And the reason, it's a real beautiful gimmick, and it's really just it's a recycled reincarnation of the Atkins diet in South Beach, but there's kernels of truth. There's kernels of truth in it, and that is why it has legs. So the problem is most Americans, they're consuming all kinds of carbohydrates, but they're the wrong kind of carbohydrates. It's the soda pop, it's the French fries, it's the ding dongs, it's the Twinkies, it's the bagels, it's the white rice, it's the white pasta, it's all the candy bars, it's the energy bars, all this nonsense. And so Americans, right? We're doing all these empty, caloric, processed carbohydrates. But when you can transition to eating carbohydrates that are in their whole natural state, or as minimally processed as possible, so whole intact grains, whole grain breads, whole grain pastas, fruit, right? Fruit is an amazing source of fructose and glucose and energy. Beans, potatoes. These are our premium carbohydrate sources that our bodies need. And again, our body's primary fuel source are carbohydrates. Our brains run on sugar, right? We all burn about 500 calories a day on in thinking, and our brain activity, primarily 100% on sugar. So carbs, unprocessed carbs, they rock.
What would you say to the people that say that the carbohydrates are not an essential nutrient?
Well, I don't know if I've ever heard that they're not an essential nutrient, but I would say that that's absolutely ridiculous, right? I mean, maybe if I don't know why, somebody was trying to do a ketogenic diet where you're trying to, teach your body how to run off, fat, which is absolutely, ridiculous. No, listen, carbohydrates are an essential nutrient. I mean, again, what are our cells run off of? They run off of sugar. They don't run off of fat, and they don't run off of protein. They run off carbs.
Okay, this is great. So after you retired as a professional triathlete, you went on to become a firefighter. So can you tell us how you got the people at your station to also follow a plant-based diet?
Well, yeah, this is a story that I've told a lot, and so I'll kind of keep it short and sweet. But basically, when I joined the Austin Fire Department in 1997, I was probably one of 1,000 guys that was eating this way. And I never used the V word, right? I always referred to it as a plant-based diet, or eventually a plant-strong diet. But you talk about a hostile environment to be eating this way. Man, it doesn't get any worse than a firehouse in meat-loving Austin, Texas. But that all changed in 2003 when we made a discovery that one of my fellow firefighting brothers was basically on a collision course with a heart attack, and one of the lieutenants at the station referred to him as a dead man walking because of his insanely elevated cholesterol level and the fact that he had a family history of men and his father dying before the age of 51. And so we were inspired and motivated to make some significant changes. And so we transitioned from what firefighters love, which is a lot of meat and bacon and unhealthy carbohydrates. And we transitioned to what I call a whole food plant strong diet. We're doing whole grain pancakes, whole grain waffles. We're doing sloppy joes made from red lentils instead of hamburger meat. We're doing lasagnas with tofu and every vegetable imaginable, and ground cashews on top, and sliced Roma tomatoes. Instead of your typical meat-laden lasagnas, we were doing wonderful fajitas. But instead of using beef, we're using butternut squash or tempeh or portobello mushrooms with all kinds of healthy sides. We're doing cheeseless pizzas. So we dove in, and as I like to say, this wasn't rabbit food. This wasn't turtle food. This was man-tastic, delicious, rib-sticking food, right? That any guy and any woman can get their mouth and their stomachs behind. And that's why we were successful. And we started it in 2003. And it's, it was a tradition at Fire Station 2 until I left in 2009. And now the good thing is there's pockets of firefighters all throughout the Austin Fire Department and fire stations all over the country that are now following the Engine 2 program.
I've never heard the term "mantastic" before, but I think it's brilliant. Now, one thing that you touched on here, which I think is actually very, very pervasive, is the fact that men typically think that eating a vegetarian diet, or vegan diet, a plant-based diet is just a straight feminine thing. So especially in the athlete world and in the men in uniform world, most men find it sort of off-putting, and they think of it as something that only women do. So how can men start to sort of think of this approach as something that they can do, and that it's not something that's only confined to, women?
Yeah. Well, it's a great question. And it's all about programming. And we've been programmed probably for the last 50 to 75 years to think that, meat is a great source of protein. Dairy is a great source of calcium. Oils are heart healthy. Coconut oil is brain healthy. And it's all marketing hype. If you look at the facts, if you look at the science, it tells a completely different story. So what we really have to do is we have to throw away our old belief system. We have to educate people with this knowledge that, and I'll use this terminology with guys. Like I spoke to a bunch of New York City firefighters 2 weeks ago, 50 of them. And I basically said, guys, You've been bamboozled and hoodwinked into thinking that meat and dairy products are strong, healthy foods, good sources of nutrients. And it's not the case. You know, you look at the science, you look at the facts, and plants are the true strong foods. So you have to pivot. You have to pivot 180 from how you currently are looking at food. And I want you to now look at meat and dairy as the weak, insidiously destructive foods, and look at plants, the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, and the beans as the strong, powerful foods that are going to take your health to a whole nother level. And so if you're truly a man, you're going to go against the prevailing winds that tell you, you got to eat meat, you got to eat cheese, you got to do dairy. And you're going to stand up because you know that this is the right thing, not only for your health, but for the planet's health. And because you want to be a good guardian to these other animals we share the planet with. That to me is the manly move. And so it's really about education. And these guys, you know, so when I started talking to these New York City firefighters, I said, you guys, I go, you know, a lot of you may have thought that by coming here tonight, you were leaving your man card at the door. But I want you to know that after 7 days of doing this Engine 2 7-day rescue diet, your man card is going to be upgraded to a whole new level. And you're not going to believe how great you feel, how clear you're thinking, the kind of amazing blue steel erections that you have. That is manly. That is manly.
I think it's great call, actually. You know, we spoke with Dr. Joel Kahn about the fact that a lot of men who eat animal-based diets end up with some version of cardiovascular disease. And the first place it manifests is actually in their genitalia. So they get erectile dysfunction, which precedes cardiovascular disease by 3 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I think another thing that actually is really kind of frustrating about this whole movement, with the paleo movement in particular, is that the paleo movement teaches you how to eat like a caveman, right? And to men, it's like, oh, I want to be a caveman. Of course I want to be a caveman. I want to gnaw on a piece of turkey, and I want to be strong and ripped, and, you know, so there's this sort of like undercurrent that says if you eat a paleo diet, you will be more manly. I think it's kind of frustrating, actually, because that's actually the exact opposite. And a lot of what you're saying is true, which is that it's marketing.
No, it absolutely is. And, you know, you talk to a true paleontologist, and they'll tell you that, you know, we weren't hunter-gatherers, we were gatherer-hunters. Did very, very little hunting, right? It was mostly gathering and picking and, you know, and foraging. So it's all a big gimmick. It's a lot of hype, not based on fact.
Absolutely. So you coined the term plant strong diet.
Yeah. Yep.
How does a plant strong diet differ from a plant-based diet, if at all?
Well, I think we all know that just because something is plant-based doesn't make it healthy, right? I mean, you know, you guys have heard this a million times, but, you know, jelly beans are plant-based, French fries are plant-based, Coca-Cola is plant-based, you know, Oreos are plant-based or vegan. So just because something is plant-based or vegan doesn't mean that it's healthy. And so when I think of something as being plant strong, it's the best that plants have to offer, right? It's the strongest form of plants. So it's plants in their whole unfettered state as unprocessed as possible. So, and if I had to put, if I had to distill down the Engine 2 philosophy into one sentence, I would say it is a whole food, plant strong diet with no added oils, where we're limiting the amount of salt, sugar, and fat.
It's very simple. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So you've been running immersions for many years now. So can you tell us, you know, how do those events go, and what type of results do you see in a short period of time? Yeah,
so I've been running these 7-day immersion programs in exotic locations for, this will be the 7th year. Over that time, we've run through about 1,300 participants, and these are medical immersions. And so on the way in, we weigh people, we check their blood pressure. We also do a lipid panel. So we draw blood to do a lipid panel. We test for total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglycerides, fasting glucose. And then on the way out, 7 days later, we do the same thing. And, you know, when I first wrote the Engine 2 book in 2009, my call to action was do it for 28 days. You know, I was like 28 days, that's how long it takes for something to become habitual, when we can really, you know, drive home these behaviors. And that's why I came up with 28 days. You know, you look around now and, you know, it's crazy how many 21-day programs there are, 28, 30, you know, I mean, it's everywhere. But what I discovered when I started doing these 7-day immersion programs is that I was wrong. I mean, it didn't, you can get some profound, dramatic, life-changing results in just 7 days. And so I was like, you know what, this is going to be my next book. I mean, we live in a society that everybody wants everything faster, quicker. You know, we live in this Twitter microwave, you know, we have this Twitter microwave mentality. And so what I discovered is people were, you know, on average, they're losing somewhere between 3 to 6 pounds in 7 days. We have some people that lose, you know, 10 to 14 pounds. On average, people are dropping about 30 points on their total cholesterol. We have some people that lose over 100. You know, I challenged these New York City firefighters to do it for 7 days. We had one of the guys that dropped 107 points on his cholesterol in 7 days. I mean, he was dumbfounded. When it comes to your LDL, the average drop has been 25 points. The triglycerides, 26 points. The blood pressure, 10/5. And because these are medical immersions, we also have to have a medical doctor. We have a medical doctor on staff. Currently, it's Dr. Clapper out of Santa Rosa with True North Health Center. And he has to bring people either off their medications or titrate them down off their medications because the food is so powerful. As you guys know, as I know, this is the most powerful medicine on the planet. It's whole plant strong foods, bar none. And so, you know, most doctors would tell you that you can't make these kind of changes in 7 days. You know, I started this private Facebook group for people that want to do the Engine 2 7-day challenge and get support. We have a little over 11,000 people on board, and we have people saying their physicians will not write a prescription for them to get another blood draw 7 days later because it's not going to change, and they won't do it for 6 months. And it's like, gosh, you know, most doctors are so incredibly ignorant when it comes to the power that's right at the end of their fingertips if they only knew about it, right? Or if they only practice it, or if they only adhere to it themselves. So it's just a crying shame how many people's lives could be enhanced and saved if their physicians would get on board. But apparently it's our job to basically teach the physicians, right? But so back to your original question, the 7-day program, you know, people hit it out of the park. If you work the program always works. It always works. Now, I tell people this is not for the faint of heart, right? This is not for the faint of heart. This is the varsity program. This is where this is Engine 2.0, where we really ratchet down the screws. This is for people that are full of heart. They want their lives back, and they want to jettison their health to levels they never dreamed possible. As you guys know, it's right there. You just got to dive into the plant strong foods.
Absolutely. It's actually really cool to hear you say this because we run retreats as well. And our retreats are actually 4 days long. And you would think that somebody who's been living with type 2 diabetes for, let's say, 15 years, who has also maybe hypertension, high cholesterol, elevated blood glucose values, is on oral medication, may even be on insulin. You would think, okay, well, there's 15 years of disease history. What possible change could you make in 4 days? You got to be kidding me. There's no such thing.
Yeah.
You put them onto a low-fat, plant-based whole foods diet, plant-based diet, right? Within 4 days, their medication requirements are not only coming down, they are plummeting just
Yeah.
like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
To the point where medication, the real risk you run is that the amount of medication that they were taking coming into the retreat is now so strong that it's going to send them to the ER.
Yeah.
What you got to really do is do it in a very controlled fashion where you're decreasing that medication and you're doing it in a very controlled manner so that they don't run into a problem.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you guys get, very rapid results as well, because I think a lot of people feel like there's no way that it can happen that quickly, but in fact, it actually does.
Oh yeah, no, and you guys being type 1 diabetics, we don't have a lot of type 1 diabetics coming through. We typically have type 2 diabetics, but with the type 2, these guys, they're either coming off their insulin or, cutting their oral medications in half, in just 7 days. And then I met a woman last night at a talk that I was giving who's been doing it now for about a month, and type 1 diabetic, and she's cut her insulin in half.
Right.
And when I had lunch with you guys, we talked about that, but it's just amazing how much more efficiently, when you start eating this way, the body can regulate and use your sugars and insulin.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just to add to that, not only for type 1 diabetics, I'm sure the person you spoke to, not only did their medication drop, but their carbohydrate intake went way up.
Right.
Sensitivity improvement is a factor of like 200, 300, 400. We've seen 600% increase in sensitivity. So it's really powerful really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's jaw dropping. So, what you guys are doing, right, to support people, to get this message out about what the power of a low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet can do for people that are living with diabetes is phenomenal. And as you guys know, I think that diabetes is in this country. It's become a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
It was amazing. In Forks Over Knives, the part of your segment is all about how, as a firefighter, you're going out and you're treating people that are having diabetes problems. In the movie, you're pricking somebody's finger.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. 80% of our call volume is firefighters, medical emergencies, right? All because of the wrong foods. And I tell people, I said, listen, we have all this chronic Western disease, and it's not that we have a genetic malfunction as Americans, right? Or as a species. It's we have a malfunction with the food we're eating, right? The food is a malfunction.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things I've actually never told you is that one of the reasons why I admire you so much is that you have this no excuses attitude, right? You're not going to let anything get in the way of you eating a plant-strong diet. So you travel a lot. You're writing books, you're running events, you're currently on a book tour. So you're all over the place, but yet you don't let the fact that you're living out of hotel rooms, that you're on the road, get in the way.
No, in fact, I try and use it to build my skills and to give me energy and look at it as an adventure. And it's exciting to see, okay, how can I get away eating plant strong in Winter Park, Florida. And you make it work. Now I will say, just to be, so people don't think that I'm some genie when it comes to making this work on the road, that, if I go out to a Italian restaurant, I'm going to be I will be plant-based, but I may not be able to be plant-strong, meaning I may have to get white pasta. I may have to get a pasta sauce that does have oil in it, right? But I will always ask, can you serve me? Do you have whole grain noodles? Do you have brown rice? Can you somehow do the pasta sauce without oil? Can you do the stir fry with veggie broth instead of instead of oil? For example, I was at some restaurant called Farmer's Table 2 nights ago, and they had this amazing shepherd's pie with lentils. And I just asked them if they could make it without any oil, and they did. It was a home run. It's crazy. So you make it work, but you gotta be willing to stand up and ask the waiter or the waitress for help.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit, because people it's a funny world and society we live in where when you go to a restaurant, people feel guilty and bad to ask for what's really just common sense. You know, I mean, how do you encourage people to like stand strong for what they're doing for themselves?
Well, nobody cares about your health as much as you do, right? And so if you're not willing to stand up and make some simple requests when you're out and about, then it's not going to happen. And if you're type 2 diabetic, if you're type 1 diabetic, if you have heart disease, these little insults, these little nutritional insults that you get if you're eating out a handful of times a week, they will add up. And, as my father likes to say with his heart patients, he doesn't want them adding 1 tablespoon of gasoline to the fire, right? Because these guys are so on the edge. Just even a little bit of olive oil could incite their angina or whatever. And so if you're gonna eat out, you gotta be willing to ask, at least ask, and don't at all feel like you're being a nuisance, you're being obnoxious. And if you feel like you don't want to, cause a stir at the table, then you can, get up, pretend like you're going to the bathroom, and then pull the waiter or the waitress aside and just say, you know what, I have some nutritional requirements, and I was wondering if you could ask the chef if he'd be willing to help me out here. Ask for help. Don't do it in an obnoxious way, right? But ask people to help you out. Usually they're willing to do it.
So I'd imagine that you're probably going to eat with people, or you're going out to restaurants maybe for lunches and dinners, but that's not necessarily for all meals. So how else are you purchasing food? Where are you getting it from when you're going to grocery store?
Like this morning, I woke up in a hotel, right? It had a little fridge in it. I'm at a Hilton hotel. And last night I gave a talk at a Whole Foods store. So what did I do? I bought a bunch of Rips Big Bowl cereal. I bought some Engine 2 almond milk. I bought some frozen mango chunks. I bought a bunch of bananas, blueberries, raspberries. And when I woke up, I had a bowl. I did a couple interviews, did some emails, went for a swim, had another bowl. And then after this interview here, I don't know, I'll have to find a place to eat. It may be, so the good thing with me is that typically 90% of my events are at Whole Food Market stores because of my relationship with Whole Foods. And, when I'm at a Whole Food store, I can always make it work.
Let's add a little bit to that. So let's talk about your food line and tell people what type of products you have and where they can get them.
Yeah. So the Engine 2 Plant Strong food line, it's a Whole Food Market exclusive brand. I have a licensing agreement with Whole Food stores. So you're not going to be able to find them anywhere else. And these Engine 2 Plant Strong food products, they're all Engine 2 compliant. So they have to meet all the criteria when it comes to being all 100% plant-based. If there's any grains, they have to be 100% whole grain. There's no added oils in any products. Everything is really low sodium, low or no added sugars, and then of course low fat. And we currently have probably 38 different products across 12 different categories. So we have everything from hot cereals, granolas, cold cereals. We have amazing plant strong burgers. We have frozen grain medley blends. We have crisp bread crackers. We have pasta sauces. We have 5 different varieties of hummus. Our most recent one is a little snack pack hummus that comes with 3 little 2-ounce containers that are great for traveling on planes. And we're coming out with frozen pizzas later this year, raviolis, Squarito burritos. So we have a lot of different options for people that are they don't want to have to read labels. They just, you find the red Engine 2 Plant Strong and know that it's whole food, plant-based compliant. And for those people that, want a little break every now and then, and they don't want to have to cook their brains out.
That's great. So going back to what we were saying earlier, you've written 3 books now. You're a New York Times best-selling author. I have this book, Plant Strong, right here. with
Yeah.
me. One of my favorite books. Plug your new book. Tell us, what is your new book and why do our listeners have to go get that right now?
Well, the Engine 2 7-Day Rescue Diet, new book, the subtitle is Eat Plants, Lose Weight, Save Your Health. And it's the compilation of the last 7 years of my life's work with these 7-day immersion programs. And it's Engine 2.0. This is an accelerated program where we, as I said earlier, we tighten the screws, and this is not for the faint of heart. This is the varsity program, but we get results. We get amazing results. And I would say 100% of the time, if you're compliant, if you follow the guidelines, and I have 7 different guidelines that I ask people to follow, 7 simple guidelines. If you follow these guidelines, you will get these insane results. And then on the back side of the book, we have the recipes, and it's all about building these no recipe bowls. So what I realized when I went out into the real world and did my pilot studies for this book was that people weren't cooking. They weren't doing a lot of cooking. They weren't following the meal plans that I had assembled. They weren't following the grocery list, but they were doing their own little bowls. So we decided to do these rescue breakfast bowls where we give people the foundational ingredients and toppings and different spark ingredients and sauces and dressings. And then you customize your bowl based upon what ingredients you want to have. And it's a total home run. So we have these breakfast bowls. We have muscular salad bowls. We have rescue flats where you can actually do sandwiches and pizzas and tacos and burritos, but we make sure you're just using one piece of bread on sandwiches. So it's an open face sandwich. And then we have these amazing supper bowls where you're taking potatoes and brown rice and polenta or 100% whole grain pasta as your foundational ingredients. And then you're adding all you want when it comes to the vegetables and the legumes and the split peas or the beans or the, butter beans, cannellini beans, you name it. And these bowls, the bowl concept, it's very user-friendly. There's very, very little prep. There's very, very little cleanup. The wonderful thing is that every bite can be reassuringly the same, or if you don't mix it up, right, every bite can be excitingly very different. So bowls are magical, and we've realized that people love them. But we also have 80 amazing recipes too for people that want to branch beyond the bowls. But the book is, it has all this seminal research in it, right, that I didn't have when I wrote Engine 2, and I could not be happier and more proud of this latest book. And, they're all your babies. You love them all.
I can't emphasize enough for the audience here the concept of tightening the screws, like you say. I mean,
yeah,
you want optimal results. If you're living with type 2 or type 1, and you want to see that blood glucose curve be the healthiest possible, you got to tighten the screws. So what you're talking about here, and the whole foods, it's really important. The intact whole grains and all that, not processed stuff is really, really important. So
yes, that's a good point, Robbie. And just to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that. So for example, in Engine 2, we were okay with tofu and tempeh, but in this new book, in the 7-day, we're not allowing tofu or tempeh because it's 40% fat. If you want to do some whole edamame, on some of your salads and stuff like that, we do allow that, but not the tofu or the tempeh. When it comes to nuts, the only nuts that we're a fan of this week are walnuts, and we want to relegate that to just one small handful of walnuts a day. There's such a great source of omega-3s, and the same thing when it comes to nut butters. Engine 2, you can do nut butters, but Engine 2.0 7-day rescue, we're not doing the nut butters. We're really limiting the amount of bread products on the 7-day rescue, and the same thing with avocados, right? I mean, we allow a quarter of an avocado a day on the 7-day program. Engine 2, you can do what you want. Same thing with dried fruit, because dried fruit is so calorie dense, and we're trying to get people to lose weight and reverse disease. We're really minimizing the amount of dried fruit. We're not doing the figs and and the prunes and the all these kind of hugely calorie dense plant-based foods.
This is perfect. I love it. It's like we've conducted all these interviews. You just brought it all together right there in one little short summary. This is exactly what diabetes community needs, like that nuance, like particular of the really whole foods. And that's where you get the results. You get the rapid results. Like you work it, it works.
Well, and you just used a word that I really liked. It's nuanced, right? It's very nuanced. We have these guidelines, and if you follow them, you will get maximum impact in the shortest possible period of time that will then make you a believer. And then, every journey starts with a step. And to me, let your plant strong journey start with these 7 days. Let these 7 days be your first step. And man, my bet is you will never turn back.
Terrific. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. You guys, love everything you're doing. Thanks.
Rip, you're a genius. Yeah, you're such a strong advocate in this community, and you're changing the lives of thousands of people. So thank you for everything that you do. I really, really appreciate it.
Peace. Engine 2, plant strong.